old forklift here. I was wrong. It's not an Army forklift. It's a Marine forklift. This is just some information here about this. This starter is not what came on this machine. This had a 24-volt system on it, and I had trouble with the starter, so I changed it over to 12-volt, and this is a gear drive starter. And if you look right here, where my finger is, I hope you can see it, that is red. All right, and the reason I'm talking about this is because, yes, I've changed starters on plenty of things. This starter is a gear drive starter I got from Russell's Alternator and Starter in Eden, North Carolina, and they do good work. I like everything they've done for me. But the fellow said, hey, you don't want that starter because he asked why I wanted to change over to 12 volts. Or I told him, I said, well, 24 volts, you have to have 2 batteries and all that. A lot more expense. And so he said, you want this one that's 12 volt and it's gear drive, so it'll spin the motor over faster. He's right, it does. It works great. But my point about all this, I know it's long. I hooked it up, and I refused to hook this up to anything because I actually went back and asked them. I did not take the starter to them, but when I got ready to start working on it, I said, hey, there's a terminal on the back. What is that for? And I don't blame them for not remembering because I bought the starter from like a year, before I went back and asked them about it because I didn't have a water pump for this thing. I finally found a water pump. I put the water pump on now. The starter business is becoming more relevant. This starter is not the same starter that was on it, so wires don't go where they went on the other one because it's a different starter. All right. So I hooked it up. Most starters ground with the case, to the actual engine itself, and that's a good ground. That's all the ground you need. And I was like, well, maybe this is just an auxiliary place where you could hook the power or whatever. Well, come to find out, I hook it up, and I can't get the thing to do anything. I refused to hook power or anything to this because I asked him, I said, this is red back here. That's typically positive. So I go down. I said, hey, if you got time, I'm going to run this thing back to you. I take it down there to him. He puts it on his little starter bench table, and he immediately hooks the ground to that terminal. And then boom, 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 everything just worked like it should. And I said, why did you hook that to ground? He said, because that's where the ground goes. I said, well, that was the deceiving thing. I thought that was supposed to be a hot, a positive, so I didn't bother to hook it there. But boom, after all, I told him over the phone, I said, it's probably something I'm not doing, but you would have thought they would have painted it any other color than red. I mean, the stud on the back of the bolt is even red. I don't know. Hope this comes out in the footage. But anyway, that's the way I saw it. But it starts and cranks, and it did crank on its own and run after it had been sitting. But that's another piece of advice that I can give people. This thing did sit outside, and what had happened was the fuel tank it was completely empty. It's got a little bit of sweat and condensate in it over the 2 years that I did not work on it. So here's my primary filter. And yes, it had water in it. And now I'm in the process. I'm going to have to bleed everything because I cranked it and it had water in it. And two-man job bleeding it. The secondary is over here. And yeah, this is not factory, nor is this factory. However, that's another story. This thing had this really old style. The filter stuff had been in it. They were canister filters, and the filter stuff had been in this thing so long that the filter stuff had completely rotted. And I could not find any numbers, get any information off of it. I couldn't do anything. So I did the next best thing. I said, well, I needed to get it cranked and moving. So I had to get all this stuff to do that. I actually have had it cranked and running. It was running just a few minutes ago. But it's running with me spraying ether into it and keeping it running with just a little bit of ether, and it'll pick up a little bit of fuel and run this filter dry. So I need to purge back through. You can, luckily, the way these are done, put fuel in them. But this is the secondary side going back to the tank. I'm assuming that's the pickup on the other side, and it comes up through the engine. And there's a pump back in here. You can't hardly see, but this is the fuel line coming over to it, fuel line coming out, fuel line going back and return. So my point is I've got to get back up in here and work on that. My throttle cable business all worked out great. I bought from a guy on eBay. Of course, that's not the original stuff. That's just some stuff that came on it. But all this time, and I thought it was an Army forklift, but it's a Marine Corps lift. So the nomenclature and all that stuff, which that's even got USMC on it there too. I didn't even notice that. I just assumed it was a Army lift. But anyway, but it's a Case forklift, and the military ordered it. I don't know if Case made these with a Detroit in them, like this is a 353 Detroit. What I would love to know is if a Case engine, a 188 diesel, would bolt to this bell housing, because I would sell the Detroit and put the Case engine in it. For one thing, the Detroit is loud. It runs good. It's just loud. The 188 Case is a quiet 4-cylinder engine. If it would fit in here, I would swap it in a heartbeat. I've got a 188 that I would rebuild and put in it, and it may not even need rebuilding. I just haven't cranked it. I know the engine's not stuck, and if it's not stuck and not got a hole in the block, it probably would run. But I still have to do some other work. I've got to get rid of this 24-volt alternator. I don't have a belt on it. It's actually locked up, but putting a one-wire Delco on it's not a big deal. But I figured I'd just like to hear it run. So it's that much closer to getting it out the door. Once I get it outside, I will have to cover it up. Plus, I need to clean up some of the wiring. Definitely need to put the gauges in it. We'll put a temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge, and then over here, I assume that's hydraulic pressure and hydraulic temperature. Need to get all that working. But it seems like it's going to work out all right. I mean, it cranked and ran long enough that I got the boom. The boom was, or the mast was completely leaned forward, and I pulled the mast back while I had it running, and my son was messing with it a little bit, so everything seemed to work like it did, and everything worked fine before. But I'll have to get my dad to help me. I'll have to take the hood back off of it, this piece, and then I can get back into the injectors and stuff like that. You got to take the valve cover off to get to all that and bleed it. I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try to bleed this system by the lines, but we'll see. See how it goes. Anyway, just a quick update. Like I say, got the radiator in, of course. Got the grill all hooked up. I had to get a new radiator cap. Put a new radiator hose in up there. Probably can't see that. But new radiator hose at the top. I had to install that solenoid also. There were 2 solenoids over there because it was 24 volt. Or maybe it only used one and used the other to do something else. But there were 2 over on the other side of the frame over there. But I put this one on here. And if I'd have ran a bigger wire, maybe I wouldn't have had to use that. But the wire going all the way up here to my switch it just wouldn't handle the power to even throw the solenoid in. So I just hooked that up and everything seemed to work fine. Starts better and works better that way. But anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing, but I guess use it for a forklift. But that's what my son asked me. He said, what'd you buy that thing for? And so I said, well, just bought it because wanted it. It was what I thought was a good deal when I bought it. But I have done a good bit of work to it. We've had to rebuild both of these cylinders that do lean the mast out. And probably I get to use it a little bit. I'm probably going to have to fix some more of them. But so far, so good. The 4-wheel drive works. The 4-wheel drive kicks out of gear fine. It steers fine. The brakes seem to work on it. Last time I drove it, which was a couple of years ago, I hope they still work. But I'm going to get the lights wired up on it. Get the gauges put in it, get a few other things going. I'm just glad nothing seems to be leaking, and it did try to crank. It actually tried to crank and run on its own. I was tickled to death with that. So, anyway, that's it in a nutshell for this thing. I'm just tickled to have it this much closer together. My plan was on my Thanksgiving break was to get it together, and it seems like I might get there tomorrow. I've got to do Thanksgiving with my wife's family tomorrow, and said we're gonna go eat lunch there, so maybe after lunch, me and my dad can get out here and work on it and try to get it battened down and working. But I got lucky because when we bought it, it had 2 flat tires on it, and I think it was the other side because these tires actually have a little bit more weather cracking on them. I mean, they're heavy duty, pretty thick ply tires. They'll take a good bit of abuse. But when we bought it, 2 of the tires were flat. And these are actually the same size tires that's on the back end of my Kubota there. I think they're 19.5s or something, 19-inch wheels or something. But they're the same size as what's on the back of my Kubota. But I called the local tire shop, R&J, down there in Ridgeway, where I got my tires for my track, the 454 and for the Massey. And I've got several tires down there from them guys. And I said, hey, I got this forklift and it's got these tires on it. I said, have you got anything down there used or anything like that you can sell me? I mean, you look at these 2 tires here, these are the 2 that I bought down there at R&J. And, man, they're good tires. And they actually match up real nice with this other set over here. And I didn't give them much of nothing for them. And I had them mount them on the wheels, and I've got 2 more. So I bought 4 because I only needed 2, but he had 4, and I said, well, I better buy all of them because there ain't no telling what we'll be running over with this thing. So anyway, I know it's a long-winded video, but and I've walked around and probably got you about half sick looking at it, but it ain't bad. I hope we can use it for something. I mean, I might load hay with it. I don't know, but I might make a big old spear to go in the front and pick up 3 bales at a time or something, But anyway, I said like and prescribe, as in making a joke. A guy didn't like that, or he thought it was strange or whatever. But like and subscribe, and maybe I'll put some better stuff on here. Maybe I'll start filming with my magnetic camera and stuff. Like and subscribe.